Good afternoon and welcome back. This is U.S. Home Talk. We are your go-to real estate podcast. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, keep your property in excellent condition, see what's going on in the real estate world, we got your back over here on U.S. Home Talk. We are your hosts, Marcus Walgrave with the South Dakota Home Team powered by Hague Realtors, Jason Walgrave with the Walgrave Real Estate Group over at RE/MAX Advantage Plus, and Mike Overson with Luminate Bank. Anything and everything real estate. Don't forget to send us your real estate questions to our real estate hotline at 612-234-7585. You guys can text that number too. It's open 24/7. That number is 612-234-7585. Also in studio with us here today is Evan Little, our amazing producer and insurance guru. Gentlemen, good afternoon. How are we doing today?
Doing fantastic. What a beautiful day.
Excellent. Beautiful. We got ice on the lakes now, huh?
Yes.
I know Marcus is excited. You haven't gone ice fishing yet, have you, Marcus?
I have not gone ice fishing. I did go on YouTube on Facebook and checked out a couple ice fishing pages to see if anybody wants to share their ice reports. And last time I heard, ice is being made. So that's a good thing if you'd like to get out there and do some ice fishing.
Yeah,
so,
buddy.
Mike, you live on a lake. You got some ice out there?
We got some ice out there. Yep. Got some ice out there, and I don't think it's going to be too much longer here. I think a couple more days we'll probably be able to drill a hole or two and walk out there. Not ready for the ice house yet, but I think we'll be able to walk out there and catch a crappie or two.
If you're out there who like to do some ice fishing, you got to be super careful. You just never really know. So be super careful. Do your research. Make sure you have all your safety tools, and be safe. So sometimes it might just wait. You may want to just wait till January to get out there on the ice. Fish aren't going to go anywhere. That might be a good call for you guys. But hey, we are going to have a great show today on U.S. Home Talk. We are going to be talking about the potential rise of foreclosures in 2026. So I know that foreclosures is kind of hasn't really been a hot topic, right? I mean, just nobody really talks about them. Jason and Mike, you guys were in the real estate industry the last, I'm going to call,
1 million years.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, 1 million years, but an incredible situation where we had a large inventory of foreclosures. I got my license and started practicing real estate in the beginning of 2014. So other than owning a home during the Great Recession and the financial market crisis, and getting through that period, other than being a homeowner, I didn't see it as a realtor because I didn't start servicing clients until 2014. Mm-hmm. So, but I mean, since I've been a licensed real estate agent, foreclosures haven't really been a large opportunity just because there just aren't that many out there. And we're going to be kind of talking about that topic here today. And so there was a couple interesting articles that I came across that I thought I wanted to share with you guys and just to kind of go over those details. So I'm just trying to find my notes here. But when you guys started, Jason, you started doing real estate at the late 90s, right around 2000, correct?
No, it was 1939 is when I started. 1939. Yes, 1999. It's interesting. So I got my license in 99. 2000 was my first full year, and interest rates were 8.25%. 30-year fixed interest rates were 8.25% in 2000, and probably even into 2001. And it's funny because I don't recall a whole lot of complaining about that. That's just what it was, and of course home prices were a lot less than they are now, but that's just what the rates were, and people still needed to buy homes, and they bought homes. And you look at the 40-year average, and it's 8.25. The 40-year average is 8.25 on the 30-year mortgage interest rates. And then you went to, the crash was in 07. So 2007 was the beginning of the real estate crash. We talk about this on the show often. If you want to know why the real estate market crashed, go watch the movie The Big Short. Very accurate to why we had the real estate crash. So a crash happens in 07, 08, 09, 2010. I mean, those 3 years were the aftermath of the real estate crash, and a lot of foreclosures. And I know you're going to go over to some stats, Marcus, but I think that the average stats are somewhere around 2% ish of all homes that are sold in any given year are foreclosure or distress sale. At that time, 08, 09, and 2010, 46%.
Woo! That's a couple.
46% of all listings were either foreclosure or short sale. And so, if we're sitting around, and you'll go over the stats, if we're sitting around 2%, or that's what it generally is, if you look at the last 30, 40, 50 years, I mean, my goodness, 46%, almost half of every listing, 50% of all listings were distress sales. So, there's no way that's going to happen again. So I just want to be clear about that. Marcus is going to talk about the potential rise in foreclosures. That I think that is possible. We're not going to have an 07, 08, 09 again. That's not going to happen for a whole number of reasons why. But any type of increase in foreclosures is not good. It's not good because something's going on, something negative's going on with the economy and folks and their their living. And so we gotta be aware of it and gotta keep an eye on it. So,
Mike, you started getting in the mortgage world in the early 2000s. So you kind of saw, you were working throughout that period as well in the real estate industry, and so I know you guys get a lot of great stats and data, and most importantly, you had great experience, right? You
Right.
guys, those are your careers, and you lived through it, you worked through it, and now we're in 2025, almost 2026, and you guys are still kicking butt in the real estate industry, whether it's on the real estate side or the financing side. So experience is hard to beat, right? And that's something to where, I mean, like I said, I was a homeowner. I purchased my first home in 2006. Great time to buy. Definitely didn't
right before the
overpay.
crash.
Definitely not at the peak of a market. Definitely not.
The easy times following after that, but it just how it was, and I was, myself and a lot of people were fortunate enough to either pick up extra jobs and to kind of manage the situation and come out on the other side, in better condition than maybe some others. So, but when we talk about, I feel like foreclosures, right? This has always been like the rebuttal for that buyer who wanted to wait. They're like, well, you know what? I saw an article. They said foreclosures are on the rise, and I feel like this is very clickbaity, because I don't think
sure.
I don't think that we are going to be seeing anything of any significance in 2026 in terms of an increase of foreclosures. And I think if you do any of your homework, I think you're going to agree with me as well. So I came across two articles. I'll start with kind of the first one. I came across it on MarketWatch.com. And it said that, hey, foreclosures are probably going to be on the rise in 2026, but most of them are going to happen in the Sun Belt states. Those are the states that are going to be affected most. And just some stats from this article was that 90% of mortgage holders who are underwater meaning that they owe more on the loan than the house that it's worth. The Sun Belt states were kind of some of the states where not only did you see the plateauing of the value of homes, you actually saw in some markets the declining of the value of homes. So that's kind of how you can kind of get underwater, right? 90% of mortgage holders who are underwater on their loans borrowed over the past 3.5 years ago. So these are kind of recent purchases. And then of those, 2/3 used mortgages backed by the Federal Housing Administration, FHA loans, and the Department of Veteran Affairs loans.
Hold on, Marcus. Say that again. 2/3 of them?
Yeah, 2/3 of those 90% who are underwater
Yep.
are borrowers who used an FHA loan or a VA loan to purchase.
Got it. So
and they're typically were first-time home buyers or military servicemen and women. So
3.5% down or no money down.
yes.
Yep.
So then that kind of gets into, like, in our past shows, we talk about, how much equity you can get in home ownership. If you just bought a home and you had a loan product that required, little to no down payment, and then you've found yourself in one of these states and specific regions in the state where you saw a decline in homes, that's where you get yourself underwater. So I think that's kind of the key points to understand with those situations where we are seeing the foreclosures tick up, and that's how maybe nothing had really happened to these individuals in terms of, like, their jobs. And we talked about job reports on our last show, and job reports were good and throughout the nation, and are kind of forecasting that they're going to be stable and healthy moving forward. So then it just kind of comes down to, like, if an individual who got into a home, the value of their homes declined, and then something happened to them, some sort of injury or illness, that created an additional financial burden, an unforeseeable event. Those are the individuals that find themselves underwater and in these positions of potentially having to foreclose.
Yeah, real quick here. Let's talk about a tale of two borrowers. Okay, VA borrower, so they can do zero down, buying a $400,000 house in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, versus buying a $400,000 house down in Phoenix, Arizona, let's say, right? So if you bought 2 years ago and you were that buyer in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, that $400,000 house is now probably worth $420 to $425, and you've paid your loan balance down to probably $390, let's say, right? You got 35 grand equity sitting in your house right now. That borrower who bought down in Phoenix, Arizona, that house might be, you paid your loan balance down to $390, let's say, but your house might be worth $380 right now because that particular market went down. Now that particular person is underwater. Same exact borrower, right? Same income, same credit score, same this, same that, just two different markets. One's underwater, one's not.
Yeah. And we saw this also too, and this will kind of, if you're underwater, obviously that's not ideal. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory there. However, it's just because you're underwater doesn't mean that you now all of a sudden have to sell. Something has to happen to that individual, that homeowner, to where they're like, oh, now something happened, like I said, an illness, an injury, or something like that. Maybe they did lose their job or something like that. But our economy, the U.S. economy is doing well, and employers are still, hiring. So even if you were to lose your job, you should be able to get into the market and find another job. It isn't like 2000 in the Great Recession, where you could have nobody was hiring, and not only were they not hiring, everybody was laying people off. That's just not the case. That's not the environment that we're in right now.
Yeah, I think it's also important to mention that just because you're underwater doesn't mean you're going to go into foreclosure. And so Marcus, you mentioned that different life events that may happen that's going to play a bigger factor on whether or not you're going to go into foreclosure rather than whether or not the home is worth. Doesn't really matter what the home is worth. Is if your income has stayed the same and you've got a fixed mortgage payment, which then also I got to bring up, if you're renting, your rent payment's going to double every 20 years. So you have that's a variable. Could be could vary every year that going up. So, just because you are underwater, it doesn't mean you're going to be underwater next year or the year after or the year after. And it doesn't mean you're going to go into foreclosure either. So, but it's an interesting stat to look at, especially because we've been talking to the Yoda of real estate, this past year, and he's been talking about, the market's a little softer in areas of Arizona and Florida and things like that. So, it's good to it's definitely good to be aware of what's going on and what it means.
Today we're talking about the potential rise of foreclosures in 2026. You guys can always give us a call or shoot us a text message on our real estate hotline, 612-234-7585. We're going to go ahead and jump into our legal minute here before we finish today's show.
This is Jeff O'Brien, attorney with Hush Blackwell with the U.S. Home Talk Legal Minute. Did you know that it is illegal to own real estate within your IRA? Individuals seeking to invest IRA funds in real estate typically use a product called a self-directed IRA. A self-directed IRA is structured like any other IRA, and there can be traditional and Roth forms. The difference with this type of product is that the IRA owner self-directs how the funds are invested rather than relying upon a professional wealth manager to make investment decisions. Self-directed IRA investors commonly invest in real estate, and many of these investors use a limited liability company to gain checkbook control to the IRA funds and decrease the administrative burden on the IRA administrator. There are a number of legal and tax issues with self-directed investments. First, care must be taken to avoid certain prohibited transactions, namely transactions involving certain persons, the IRA owner individually and or his or her spouse and lineal descendants, which the IRS deems to be an IRA distribution, which will trigger significant tax, interest, and penalties. For example, an investor owning real estate within his or her self-directed IRA cannot take a fee personally for managing the properties. Also, some types of transactions can trigger unrelated business income tax under the Internal Revenue Code, such as if a property is leased to a retail tenant and a portion of the rent is tied to the tenant's sales, additional tax would apply to that portion of the rental income. Self-directed real estate investments can be a good way to diversify your portfolio, but are complex and a knowledgeable attorney should be consulted before utilizing this type of investment. This is Jeff O'Brien, attorney with Hush Blackwell with the U.S. Home Talk Legal Minute.
Thank you, Jeff O'Brien, for the legal minute. Always super helpful.
Consultant Jeff O'Brien on that topic as well. So,
if you guys want to try to get contact with us or any of our amazing sponsors, you guys can find us on our website, ushometalk.com. It's the best way to get a hold of us. Or you can shoot us a call or a text message on our hotline, 612-234-7585. Today we're talking about a potential rise of foreclosures here in the U.S. As I said, I came across a couple good articles, one from marketwatch.com, and one part with two was they were talking about foreclosure rates were the highest in states like Florida. Texas was 10th on that list as well. And another really good article that I came across was on CNBC.com. And I think this kind of goes into the point that you were talking about earlier, Jason, about some of the stats historically, things of that nature. And it made the comment foreclosure filings climbed again in October. But make note that it was after sitting at historic lows in recent years. And that's why you just don't necessarily hear a lot of people talking about foreclosures. There was a 6% rise in the month, 20% higher than the year before. And completed foreclosures, the ones that have got to the final phase of a foreclosure, jumped up 32% year over year. So you hear like 20% higher and 30% more year over year. Those are big numbers, right? But you just got to keep in mind again what we're comparing them to, and we're comparing them to a historic lows in recent years. So even if you do see those big jumps, it doesn't necessarily mean like, hey, we got some crazy times ahead of us. The CNBC.com article interviewed Rick Sharga, who is the CEO of CJ Patrick Company. It's a real estate market intelligence firm, which I found was interesting. A real estate market intelligence firm. I'm sure they're heavily involved in analytics and numbers and things of that nature. But Rick said that at the peak of the Great Recession, more than 4% of mortgages were in foreclosure. Today, less than 0.5% are in foreclosure, well below the historic average, which is between 1 and 1.5%. So when we're at a historic low of 0.5% foreclosure, and the average historically since the beginning of loans is 1 to 1.5%, I mean, you see that and it's like, hey, I mean, there's a lot of wiggle room just to get into the historic average.
Right.
So there's yes, I think that there's definitely we're going to hear and see more foreclosures come in 2026. But it's going to fall within an average year of that 1 to 1.5%.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. Those were the numbers I was looking for, Marcus. Because if you're talking about a rise of 20%, that means it's going from 0.5 to 0.6.
Yes.
which is still much less than the 1 to 1.5. So as far as
but you can sensationalize it in an article, right?
I
mean, if you're at 0.5
that's
and you're
my
like,
point.
it's up 200%. You'd be like, holy crap, 200%. Like, what is going on here? Get ready, for the foreclosure inventory to just explode. It's like, well, not necessarily the case. I mean, even at that, you're still in this 1 to 1.5% historical average in any given year. So
out of 2,000 homes that are out there at a 0.5% foreclosure rate, 10 of those homes are going into foreclosure. 10 out of 2,000.
Yeah.
And what's your inventory up there right now?
About 10,000.
About 10,000 homes.
Yep.
Yeah. So you're a very small percent, and that's from the full price range, right?
So we'll have 100 homes. So if we got 10,000 listings out there, 100 of those homes are foreclosures. The other 9,900 are just normal market sales.
Yeah.
And if it goes up 20%, now instead of 10 out of every 2,000 homes, it's now 12 out of every 2,000 homes is in foreclosure. Right? So, but it's one of those things too, we got to remember, right? And the Yoda taught me this. He's like, if you have an apartment building of 20 units, okay, let's say you got a 20 unit apartment building. If you have every single unit full, you're not charging enough for rents. Now, if you have vacancy rate of 20%, now you're charging too much for rents. He's like, but you should always have at least a little bit of vacancy, because otherwise, if you don't have any vacancy in there, that means you're charging too little for rents. So you always want to have 1 or 2 units that are open, right, that are vacant, because now you can see, okay, I'm charging the right amount, right? You'd be leaving meat on the bone there if they're all rented out because you're charging too little. Same thing here. It's like when it comes to lending, right, the government can loosen the guidelines for what is an acceptable loan to give, or they can tighten them up, right? They were really loose before the crash, really loose, right? That's why we had 46% of homes going to foreclosures and short sales, right? Too loose, okay? Yeah. We learned our lesson there. Yeah. Then they swung it and they went way too tight. And now foreclosures went to almost nothing, right? You almost want to have that 1.5%, ish, 2% maybe in foreclosures to happen out there, because that means that you're not so tight on lending that no one can get a loan, but you're also not so loose that we're going to have this huge onslaught of like inventory homes coming on from banks and stuff like that for having to foreclose and short sale. So,
yeah, and they don't have an easy job, right?
No.
I mean, when we sit back and you're like, come on, just like fix the rates already, and it's like, I mean, if you overdo something, you could really mess it up on the opposite spectrum. So, so, but I mean, if you're out there and you're thinking that you catch an article that talks about foreclosures are on the rise in 2026, and you're thinking to yourself, you know what, that's going to just really spike up the inventory. A higher inventory means that we're going to have a higher supply and demand. That means that the prices are going to come across the board throughout the nation, especially in my market in the Midwest. Probably not going to happen. Probably not going to happen.
So as we wrap up, I do want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we're excited to come back first part of 2026 and just rock some shows next year.
Just crank them out. That's what we're going to do.
Yes, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. As our show does come to end, we do want to thank you guys all for your support of U.S. Home Talk. You guys can find today's show or any of our past shows on our website at ushometalk.com or wherever you guys find your podcast. This is Marcus Walgrave, Jason Walgrave, Mike Overson. Have yourself a blessed week.